I would like to present this article by Uta Frith about slow science. I'm actually gonna present the concept in general. I'm not focusing only on this article. I read several of them, but I just decided to put this one as the most representative one. So first, I'm just going to try to define it. The slow science is a movement, a community that is kind of an answer to the philosophy we have in science now of publish or perish. So it's a counter movement, and we can imagine it as it's the publish or perish philosophy is taking us to the places of power, while the slow science aiming to take us to the places of knowledge. And the relationship between these two concepts and the reason why we meet here, so reproducibility, is because the publish or perish philosophy is contributing to reproducibility crisis. This current model of publish or perish consider repeating the same research again and again to replicate results as a waste of time. So in this context, only fancy experiments are published but never reproduced. This is a real problem because in addition to that, only like these findings are published by big journals such as Nature, Science and Cell. So the findings they obtain are taken as the absolute truth, and they are super easily spread, but we are not sure about the reality of those findings because we don't reproduce them. So we just don't know if we are dealing with the truth or not. Only low-tier journals, if any, would publish a similar paper again, and since they are not super known, this will barely resonate. So this is basically the problem of publish or perish philosophy and the reproducibility crisis. And in case you're not convinced that we are having a reproducibility crisis, I'm just going to mention the results of a survey made by Nature, in which they interviewed 1,576 researchers. They were asked different questions, such as, well, first, do you think there is a crisis, such a crisis? Like 90% of them agreed on that, but this is not the most interesting question. In this one, for instance, they were asked if they succeeded to reproduce an experiment, and regardless the discipline, 60% of them failed to reproduce an experiment of another person, and more than 40% failed to reproduce their own experiments. So this was pretty shocking for me. They attributed this problem to the pressure to publish, or again, publish or perish pressure, and to selective reporting, which is also a consequence of this philosophy. Also, super interesting for me was this question when they were asked if they succeeded to publish an attempt of a reproduction experiment. It was easier to publish it if the reproduction was successful. So this also says a lot about how this problem is taken by journals, for instance. So I hope you're convinced now that there is a problem. Now let's talk about the general features of this publish or perish model. Some of them you already know, I'm sure, but maybe not all of them. So the thing is that Europe is embracing the North American way of obtaining funding. So basically, there is an increased competition to get grants, and they finance for shorter periods of time. So this is one of the first problems. Then we're living in a production-oriented research and not curiosity-driven research. The problem with that is that, for instance, when we write a grant, we ask for a grant, it's almost like if we knew already the results we're going to obtain, just to ensure the return on investment, right? So it is not curiosity driven as it should. It is a really different situation as in the 19th century, where in Germany, for instance, they were at the top of physiological discoveries because they had all the material they wanted, all the money they wanted, and they could pursue the curiosity to make the discoveries. So different picture today. Then another problem with this model is that it's impossible to catch up with literature, even in super specific disciplines, right? In super specific disciplines, you can just not read the whole thing. My personal experience on that is that I have 3 or 4 email alerts. I get every week. I get after filtering more or less 10 articles to read, and I just have the time to read one of them. So the pile is increasing. Like I just cannot deal with that. So this is also a problem. The problem also is that we have more and more researchers each year, but the individual output is also increasing. So it's not only about that. so impossible to catch up. Then there is a lack of scientific integrity due to the pressure we have. So people tend to copy results, invent results, selective reporting, do selective reporting when publishing, and all kinds of lack of scientific integrity. And then we are living in a knowledge economy, which means that there's no time for hesitation. We cannot ask exploration-like questions, like what-if questions. And fast science wants results within a super short time frame. So we have a lot of pressure. Scientific papers can be seen as junk food, so not a lot of content inside. So yeah, this is the whole picture of the publish or perish philosophy. Now, what is the slow science proposal? Well, I'm just going to talk about the origin a little bit. It is super paradoxical that Eugene Garfield was one of the guys at the origin of this movement, because this guy was also the one proposing not the H index, but the index for the journals, the impact factor, exactly. So the same guy that proposed the impact factor was also at the origin of the slow science. This is just an anecdote. So slow science considers science as a common good. So we should not see science as in terms of deliverables or of productivity, right? So it's something meant for society, and this is the way they see science. Then they also see it as a curiosity-driven research. This point is really important for me, because when we are driven by curiosity and not by production, we are also more flexible and more open to different results, because we are not tied to an exact objective, right? Then they propose also to do less but better publications. This is related to the junk food. Actually, the slow science movement emerged at the same time as slow food in Italy in the 80s. So what they propose is that we care more about quality and not so much about quantity. I don't know if I forget something about this point. So yeah, we should take good care of every piece of science we publish, and so publishing less ensures that the publication are of a high quality, because also the peer review are not. They can deal with the publications, in a good pace. Then it is also related to better scientific practices, because we have less pressure, so we are not forced to cheat when we publish science. And they also prone a science in which we have more time. Science needs more time to think, more time to fail. We don't need to give explanations to the public every time they ask, because sometimes we don't have the explanations they are asking for. So even if I represented this with a turtle and they pick the term slow, it doesn't really necessarily mean slow as the opposite of fast. The advocates are just asking for more time to think, and they think that time should not be constrained subject to any time constraint. So they are just asking for giving more time to researchers to do the science in the best quality they can. So this is basically what slow science proposes. I know it's difficult because we all here know the rules of academia, and it's not so easy to just change our practices, but there are some little stuff that we can do in our labs, starting by changing a little bit our mindsets. So in our mindset, we can start to think in longer time scales. So maybe go beyond our lifetime, because this is the way research is meant to be. Then also stop giving credit to scientometrics, such as the H index and so on, because we are the first ones doing that. Actually, I have heard a lot of friends of mine asking for the H index or this lab before engaging with them or something like that. We are the ones making this happen. So we should just stop doing this bullshit. We should also try to be driven by curiosity. I explained this point before, so I don't think it deserves more attention than that. And stop being obsessed with publications. So at least with the quantity of publications, where maybe we should start to think more about the quality. Publications are just a way to share our discoveries, but when we have a discovery, not every year of PhD or something like that. Then also it would be nice to detach from the ambitions of our peers and be absorbed in our own research. And this is making more difficult to get this success in the academia, but maybe we are going to get more pleasure out of our work if we think this way. And then also don't be afraid of dead ends, because every serious research encounters these kind of problems. Yeah, so dead ends actually, they are part of the research, so we should be afraid of that. And also think collaboratively. This is also related to the thinking in longer timescales. So we should get rid of this idea of the lone genius making only science. This is just fake. Science is built with everybody, and this is the way of thinking of it, I think. And then, yeah, so this is related to the slow food movement. So base our relationship with research in pleasure and conviviality. So it's not a matter of changing the diet, for instance, increasing the protein to fat ratio, just change the relationship with toxic relationship we have with science and take more pleasure with it and make it more convivial. Then this list is shorter, don't worry. From the point of view of the scientific community, what the authors propose to give more credit to nice questions and the creativity in the answers. So we don't need just fancy experiments. We can just be creative, and that's it. The point of science is giving answer to questions. So try to be an integral scientist, not only with our practices, but also if we are witnessing like bad practice, we can also report them. And then reward researchers who embark in long-term projects. Maybe not in our scale, but if we are part of a jury or something like that, we should start to think in long-term in research. Of course, assess quality rather than quantity. It's cliche, but I think this is crucial. And do less but better. And then from the point of view of the establishment, what they propose, I think it's super ambitious, but I don't think it's a bad idea to limit the number of grants that anyone can hold at a time. Maybe you can think it's impossible, but similar stuff were already done, for instance, in the wine, in the viticulture. So the Grand Cru are limited they have limited vineyards attributed because they think it's not possible to have like good care of plants, and this is not compatible with mass production. So it's already done. So there's a trade-off of quality and quantity in the vineyards, which is a super industry in France. So why not doing the same in science? So there is some hope. There is just some little changes which we should do in our heads first, and then also talk about it with others, just to make sure we are all on the same page. Some inspiring examples. We have the examples of Charles Goodyear. So this is the guy that invented the vulcanized rubber. The vulcanization is a technique that actually takes the rubber and they heat it, and they add also sulfur and other stuff, and they make it more elastic, more resistant, and well, it's like a nice material, okay? It's used in many things, in hoses, in tires, in bowling balls. So this material, this technique was discovered after decades of research, after pushing many false starts. So it wasn't a matter of 4 years or 3, like a PhD. So a question I would like to throw to the air: are contemporary scientists devoting this much time to a single goal? I don't think so. Then there is also the example of Isabelle Stengers, which is a Belgian philosopher. She wrote this book about slow science. It is called Another Science is Possible. It's also in French. I didn't read it yet, but I'm going to give it a try because I think it's worth it. And then I will, before opening the debate, if there is some, I'd like to give you this example, this quote that I loved. Slow-growing trees alter the environment more sustainably than wild grasses. The brilliance of the latter lasts only for a time, that of a season. And I think this pretty much describes what slow science is trying to transmit us. So that's it. If you want to share your insights, your opinions on that, the feasibility, do you think it's too ambitious? Do you think that you can do stuff at your level? Not, it's impossible. We're